Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, a special deep dive episode that we record exclusively for our patrons on Patreon and our academics in the Bestseller Academy. And today we're going to be diving into artificial intelligence and authors. We're going to discuss the impact that AI might have on writers, using artificial intelligence ethically in your writing, and what ChatGPT is good for, and much more. And I'm delighted to be joined once again on the podcast by Jeevani Charika, who is author of Playing for Love, Picture Perfect, Convenient Marriage, This Stolen Life, and much more. And importantly, Jeev also has a DPhil in microbiology. So we have an actual scientist in the Bestseller Experiment team on Facebook, which is why when I saw Jeev experimenting with ChatGPT that I had to invite her on the podcast for this deep dive. And I'm delighted that she said yes. Jeev, welcome back to the podcast. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. It's nice to be back.
It's great to have you back. And listeners, I will put links in the show notes so you can. We've done deep dives from writing comedy and all sorts of stuff. So your brilliant book and getting published. So I'll put links into the show notes for those so you can check out Jeev's other great works. But AI, now this is the hot topic, and I don't think this is going away. And when I saw you, the scientist, experimenting with this. So what have you been up to, Jeev? What have you been playing with on ChatGPT? And let's talk basic terms as well. Can you tell us what ChatGPT actually is?
Oh, now you're asking. So it's an AI interface, which basically it's one of them. There's quite a few, but ChatGPT is the one that seems to have taken up. It got in first, and it's got everybody's imagination fired up. Yeah, and it's an interface, but it's like a natural language interface. So it will talk to you like a real person would talk to you, right, which is kind of disarming and a little bit scary.
Yes, we are scared by this stuff. But I kind of feel that we shouldn't be. This is new technology. Like any technology, it's a tool that has advantages and disadvantages. Yeah. But you seem to think that it might affect romance writers more than most, and you asked it to write a Christmas romance plot. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I don't actually think that. But if you look at the press, there's quite a lot of articles about, are romance writers really scared of it? And bless them, they're very concerned for us. But we're not actually that scared of it. Good. Mainly because the point of romance is emotion, and AI is not very good at that yet. Right. And I'll go into that in a little bit. So what I did was, this was just after Christmas when like ChatGPT came out in beta and you could log in. I said, can you write me a Christmas romance, a plot for a Christmas romance? And it did, right? It pulled out the most generic Christmas romance. They were called Jack and Sarah for a start. Which is like a title of a film in itself. Yes. Yes. And so I thought, it was something like, Jack's really grumpy and Sarah's working in a shop. And, it was just, standard Christmas fare. I thought, okay, fair enough. That's not terrible. Can you turn this into a 25 scene breakdown for me? Which it did. And I looked through it and I thought, well, 10 of those, that's just a montage. Right. So you've actually got about 15 scenes in there. But what it doesn't do is have any emotional arc. It's got no central dramatic argument. And there's just no emotional arc for either of the characters. It's just like A happens, B happens, C happens. And, beginning, middle, and an end. So structurally, it kind of makes sense. The sentences all read fine. Yeah. But there's no real emotional journey for the character. And the whole point of a good story is the emotional journey for the character. Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe if you're spitballing ideas, it might be useful. Well, the weird thing is, Jack and Sarah, we had the author of that, the screenwriter of that in the podcast. We had Tim Sullivan on here. I wonder if it's somehow drawing tendrils from the podcast to you. But anyway, that is kind of spooky. But yes, it's so how much should we be leaning on ChatGPT? I mean, maybe if it's giving us rough outlines, it could be good for that. But no further. I mean, it's
I don't know. I mean, it's an evolving field, and plus the technology is evolving. Us querying it, it's learning from our responses to the query. Yes. How good the query is. So it's like it's a neural network. It is learning as it goes. So it will get exponentially better. But one of the things that as somebody who is from a minority background, and I write books featuring minority background characters, one of the things I'm wary of is it can't say anything new. It has to rely on what's already been said.
Yeah.
And what's already been said is overwhelmingly white, Western, cis het.
Yeah.
And so what it could spit out, unless you very, very specifically interrogate it and make it do more and more, it has to rely on stereotypes because that's the majority of what's out there for it to learn from.
Yeah.
So that's a side issue, but quite a big one.
Yeah.
So it can't say anything new, fiction or nonfiction. Whereas you can, and that's the whole point of being human, is that we make these leaps of understanding or connections and kind of come up with something different. And it can't do that.
There's a risk of this kind of blandness. I think one of the reasons romance probably feared this is because I think outsiders think romance is formulaic, boy meets girl, blah, 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 happy ending kind of thing. And also with, I think other genres like science fiction, we recently saw Clark's World, which is one of the few places where science fiction authors can get sort of unrepresented science fiction authors can get their work out there is through magazines like Clark's World. And they had to shut down their submissions because people were using ChatGPT to write formulaic science fiction stories. So there is, I mean, my big worry was that people would flood the market and KDP and the like with bad writing. But then I guess we've always had bad writing, haven't we?
We've always had that, and I'm pretty sure they're out there already. I mean, on Facebook, I'm seeing ads for lots of nonfiction things. Oh, I got ChatGPT to write me, or I got AI to write this book, and you think, really? There's no thought gone into that at all.
Yeah.
So there is going to be nothing in there that Google can't tell me.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what ChatGPT is good for. So. Take us through the pluses of this, because there is plenty to be optimistic about, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. It's like having anything that you need to brainstorm. It's just having a bigger brain to storm with.
Right.
Because it has all this information at its disposal. Sometimes it makes stuff up, but that's because it's kind of like a part search engine, part autocomplete.
Right.
So it'll tell you what it expects to see next. So it'll come up with really convincing sounding things, and you're like, oh, this is referenced in this book, and you go and look at the book, and the book doesn't exist. It just sounds like it should.
Right.
But yeah, one of the things it's really good for is coming up with titles. You can give it like loads of information and go, I need this, and this in a rom-com title, and it'll come up with pretty impressive lists of titles. Some of them are just the same word swapped around, but some of them are quite impressive. One of my things that I do to decompress is do book covers in Canva. Yeah. So I asked it to give me something like 250 titles for rom-coms in the seaside or with the city or so. And then I used some of those titles to make 25 book covers. And some of those titles are brilliant. The Flirt Whisperer, random. Loved it. So it's really good for titles. It's really good for redoing your blurb for you.
Yes.
You can put in your existing blurb and say, can you redo this in the style of? Yeah. And it'll do that.
I've used it to do that. But what I found is the first one that comes up, and then I ask it to do it again. And actually the second one was even better.
Yeah.
Which was seconds later.
Because it's not doing the most obvious one.
Yeah. It's really handy for that.
So it's worth doing like 3 or 4 and then picking out the sentences that kind of jump out at you because it's just rephrasing it over and over again, and you'll get much better phrasing that you can use for the blurb that you write in the end. Mm-hmm. It's really good for ad copy. Same thing. You just need it shorter and pithier. You tell it and it'll extract stuff. I quite like it for sparking ideas.
Okay.
So if you start with theme and want to build out, if you're that kind of planner, then you can say, okay, I'm writing a book about fathers. Tell me about all the different types of fatherhood there is. And I actually did this because I have written a book about fathers, and I know I did it all with spider diagrams and did it by hand years ago. So I know what I found my mind map for it. And I was like, okay,
right.
Let's see what AI can do. So and it came up with all these different types of fatherhood, which is, unexpected, expected, estranged, adopted, all of those things. And quite a lot of them were on my mind map as well. And then you could ask it to kind of interrogate it further. And it was really, really good for sparking ideas and kind of going off into tangents, which at the planning stage is really, really useful.
Really useful, really useful. And it's good at the things that generally authors are either bad at or like blurbs, like ad copy. I mean, I'm hopeless at that kind of stuff. I find it really, really tricky. And I think a lot of listeners will relate to that as well. And so having something that can, at least, I mean, the thing is, I think the key is not to just use what it throws up, but to take that and tinker with it and use it as a starting off point as well.
It gives you much better raw material to work with.
Absolutely. Yeah. It gives you something to work with in the first place as well. Now, listeners, Jeev has done a really good blog about this, an article about this, and I'll put a link in the show notes so you can check that out as well. Now, there's the question of are we using this ethically? Because there are, we could do a whole episode on using art because it does scrape existing artworks out there and uses it without permissions, and there's a whole ethical conundrum there. But what
there's a court case as well running at the moment. They went after one of the smaller AI image generators, which was interesting because it's a test case.
Test case, yeah. But what's a good rule of thumb ethically? Because this is the thing. I was thinking, I'm not going to fold when this first came along, I folded my arms.
Yeah, I thought that too, yeah.
I'm not going to use any AI. And I thought, hang on, spell check is a kind of AI that's all right.
Pro-writing aid is
pro-writing aid, yeah.
It rephrase stuff for you. So
absolutely, yeah. I mean, they're compared to ChatGPT, they're kind of thick as mints, but they will get better. So I'm kind of using it anyway. So what's a good rule of thumb ethically when we're thinking about using AI?
I think just as authors' views on how we should be using it differs, I think readers' views are also going to differ. So I think we just have to tell them how much we've used. There's a really good guide that the Alliance of Independent Authors have done. And Joanna Penn and Honor Ross have been on the case of AI for a very long time. So they're very knowledgeable about it. But it basically boils down to tell people if you use, say, pseudo-write or something like that, which is aimed entirely at authors, then mention it so that people know.
Yeah.
And I'm still torn whether is it cheating, is it not cheating? Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
No. Well, I think again, I think if you just accept these things, then it's
not going away, is it?
It's not going away. And again, it's a tool. I think you can use these things for good and evil. And I think if you use it to, as you said, these things they're not good at emotion. They're not good at conveying emotions. They give us something to work with. And I think, to be honest, we read for an emotional response. We write to get an emotional response from our readers.
I mean, I've never had feedback where somebody said, I liked that this happened. But the feedback tends to be, I like that the character did this.
Yeah.
Or I like that the character said this. So it's all to do with people. People read for people.
Yeah.
So, so I think it would be interesting if it could do plot twists. That would be nice. There's an episode on Script Notes where they asked it to do a Knives Out style murder mystery, and it was just basically Knives Out rehashed in space.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've got some way to go before it puts us out of a job, I think, because I think voice, or an author's voice as well, is something which, again, we asked it to basically do an episode of the bestseller experiment, and it came up with a transcript, and it got quite. Again, it was
quite close with it.
it was kind of a vanilla version of it. It got the structure of it and the kind of things that we're about, but it didn't quite capture the voice. And I know Julian Barr also did an experiment where it asked it to pretend to be Ben Aronovich, and all it did was sort of put on a Cockney accent. You know,
that was very funny. I saw that. Yeah.
So yeah,
it just got more Cockney.
It did. It's so. But again, these are very, very, very early days as well. So we may circle back to this. But how much AI are you kind of using in your everyday now, or is it something that as an author that you're using very often?
Not really. I'm trying not to fall into it because I think it's one of those things that you can start to rely on it. And I don't want to because voice. But I think with brainstorming and stuff, I probably would use it. I would use it as a sort of hyped up search engine, really.
Okay.
One of the things to be wary of, though, is that it does make stuff up. So you do need to check. When Google was new and Wikipedia was new, back in the early 2000s, I had a job as an information scientist. So I was working for a patent attorney firm, and there was a big debate on, is the information you get, can you use the information you get off the internet as proof? And you couldn't, right, because anybody can say anything on the internet. So finding information was no longer a huge skill. Information curation became a skill, and that's going to happen again. I think the same conversations are now happening again. Like, you can't trust GPT to come up with real answers. Yeah. So how do you curate what's coming? Right. And so Web 3.0, same conversations as we had at 1.0, just more advanced.
So what curation skills should we be developing then? What are sort of the things we need to look out for?
At the moment, if it tells you, if it gives you a source, go to the source. Always check your sources.
Right. Okay.
It's good advice anyway, right? Common sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're just like your due diligence, if you're writing about something, a topic that you don't know about, go again to original sources. There are forums for everything. There are people you can ask. Yeah. You can just put a question out on Twitter and people will tell you information. Yeah. So just due diligence. Again,
I think the Wikipedia Google analogy is a good one there, because I use Wikipedia all the time, but it's not. I use it as a jumping off point. I use it for me, it's like a signpost at a crossroads, and I will go to Wikipedia about a subject, and then I do look at the footnotes. I look at where the sources are, and then that's where I dig a bit deeper. So it's never
Wikipedia is great for the vocabulary, to get the very basics, and then if you want detail, you have to go and actually look at proper sources.
Absolutely, and what do you? I mean, this is crystal ball kind of time here, but what do you see in the future for AI and authors? I mean, should we be worried? I mean, it is growing at an exponential rate already. We're recording this in April, and the ChatGPT that appeared last year already seems quite dozy compared to the new version. So, what do you think we'll be seeing in the future with ChatGPT?
I think we probably will see a lot of sort of AI written things, but I think you will still be able to tell them apart. It just means that we'll just have to come up with weirder, wackier, more creative things in order to stand out as humans. So long as you are clear when you are using AI and when you're not, that should be okay. As you say, images, it's a whole other thing. Canva has now basically baked AI into a lot of their tools.
Right.
So, you're going to be using them anyway. So, like, they've got this magic anything is basically AI. Magic erase, magic animate.
Yeah, and listeners, check out. Is it on your YouTube channel? It is, yeah. Yeah, I'll put a link so people can check this out, because you've been experimenting with this a lot, and I found it absolutely fascinating.
At the moment, I'm playing with animated book covers because I'm like, that's going to happen. That's really going to happen.
Yeah. Again, that's an exciting thing. You talked earlier about being clear. One of the things I've been toying with is either in my acknowledgements or somewhere in the book, just saying, this book was written by a human. I use Pro Writing Aid. I use spell check, but I didn't use any other kind of AI. I mean, do you think that's going to become a standard thing?
I think that's going to become normal, because I think most people would just go, oh, pro writing aid, yeah, that's fine. Spell check, that's fine. Because everybody uses it. I think that's the thing. The more people are going to be okay with the fact. I mean, everybody uses spell check these days. Nobody cares.
Yeah. The other thing I'd be interested to see, and this came up in a conversation with an author the other day, is things like the kind of artificial intelligence that certainly indie authors are really, really reliant on. Things like also bots on Amazon. Again, they're kind of very basic AI, but maybe they will improve in the future as well. This idea that, okay, because you bought a Terry Pratchett, you just want to read more Terry Pratchett or whatever. Maybe that will benefit readers as well in terms of, giving them a more nuanced kind of suggestion of the kind of things that they like. Do you think that might happen?
I think it probably will. I think it probably is already in the works. And, that could be a good thing, because we are complicated people. We don't all you say you're a sci-fi reader, you don't only read sci-fi, you read other things as well. So, I'm a romance reader. I do read crime and fantasy. And So I think more nuance probably will happen.
So in short, Jeevani, we should be optimistic about the future. Do you think we shouldn't be? Because I know a lot of authors, when they saw this coming, were kind of, deeply concerned. They thought they're all going to be out of a job, all replaced by
not yet. Anyway.
No. But we should be positive about this.
Yes, and it's a tool, as you say. We'll just learn how to use it better.
Cool stuff. Well, look, that's good enough for me, Jeev. Let's march into the future and embrace our AI overlords and work with them, and make it work for ourselves. So this is all.
I do always say please, just in case they're listening.
That is true. Actually, I do that with Siri. I will always say please and thank you, because you never know. They will remember this stuff. The AI elephant never forgets. And when they do finally subjugate us, they might remember the people who said please. So bear that in mind, listeners. Jeevani, thank you so much for this. This is really, really helpful and reassuring. Folks, there are going to be lots of links in the show notes. You can check out the kind of experiments that Jeevani's been doing and the advice that people are giving on this. Fantastic. Jeevani, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me, and hope to speak to you again soon.
Yes, thank you for having me.